After a very lackluster season for Queasy and Veno, they have returned to dominant form by winning the most recent Duo Cash Cup Opens. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at how they dropped an insane 30 bomb at the highest elo in EU. Queasy and Veno switched their drop last season, but now have returned back to Kenjutsu, and thus far it's worked out incredibly well for them. Just look how they easily outdrop their opponents, both Queasy and Veno landing first. This allows Queasy and Veno to pitch an opponent who's trying to get a chest at a lower level. They pick up that elimination, and Queasy does something that's very underrated. He's going to immediately throw a turret down. This turret is going to come into play a little bit later. Unfortunately, Veno does get isolated by the duo, but just take a look at the edit that he makes after getting cracked. He edits the ramp and then jumps upward. This makes it incredibly hard for the opponent to hit a headshot and one-pump him even though he has no shield, and Veno gets the elimination. Here's where the turret comes into play. The turret starts going off, notifying that Queasy and Veno are getting third-partied by another team outside of Kenjutsu. This allows them to drop a couple layers down below and get their loot, health, and shield back up before they get into another fight. After getting their health and shield up after their off-spawn fight, Queasy makes one of the most 200 IQ baits I've ever seen in a tournament. He goes out as a solo to the flag and begins to capture it. He also gets the brick around the flag, so he has a little bit of materials because he is essentially shambles. He also smartly shoots down the drones and gets tons of free shield from it. The opponent actually cracks his shield, and this is exactly what Queasy wants. This flushes out the opponent's duo, and little do they know, Veno is sitting up top watching over Queasy, and he gets a free pick onto one of the duo mates. Queasy gets rushed after getting cracked, but just plays time, and Veno cleans him up, and then they get the flag as well as the entire POI to themselves now. After picking up those two duos on drop, they decide to rotate out of their POI very quickly. They're very fortunate enough to stumble on a duo that is fighting at the launch pad at the south side of Dojo in South Mega. Notice how they don't fully commit to the fight until Veno gets a crack on this opponent. Veno intelligently uses the zipline to fly in and get a free elimination. Both of those duos are incredibly shambles, and Veno picks up a very quick 3 kills with little to no shield investment. After getting those 3 kills, they decide to rotate to the guard tower because they want to get forecasts and or slurps. And this is where the sniper in Veno's inventory is going to be absolutely crucial to their success. While going over there, Veno is going to pick up not 1 but 2 headshot snipes, which really cuts down on the number of teams that they're going to fight. He then runs into another pro duo in Della. Veno doesn't do anything crazy, basically waits to catch the opponent make a mistake, and he just edits on him, finishes him really quickly. Queasy nearly does sell, but Veno supports him, and then Queasy just picks up and finishes the fight, and they now own sole possession of the key card, and now will have forecast for the rest of the match, which is in their hands, basically overpowered. Queasy also had another 200 IQ bait, this time for the cash. Instead of claiming the gold loot on the cash, what they end up doing is baiting it. Queasy waits inside of a storage container, and Veno hides behind a trash can. The opponents come in, and the first person in the duo gets thunder pumped by both of them and gets knocked. Veno then hits about a 50 tag and then gets run at, and Queasy supports him, and they clean up that duo and now also get the cash. After picking up the loot from their cache, Veno is once again going to use his sniper and get a free headshot elimination. After a little while, that duo runs around with a rocket a little bit, and Veno just shoots him in the back, basically when he runs out of mats, and they pick up that duo essentially for free. After picking up this duo, they decide to rotate towards North Bastion and W-key the highest team on the highest mountain in the game, thus displaying their absolutely insane level of confidence in this game. But once Veno is fortunate enough to knock one essentially in a 1v1, look at what Queasy does. Queasy already knows that his shield is cracked, but take a look at what he does with his pickaxe. He never ever swings more than once or pickaxe baits when Veno is not around. And as soon as Veno hops onto the opponent's wall, that's when Queasy starts to pickaxe bait, and they end up picking up this opponent, and now they control the high ground, also knowing where zone goes. After claiming this power position, it should be no surprise that Veno easily gets another headshot snipe on a team that's rotating down below, and they continue to sit there until the next zone pulls. A little bit later on, Veno once again capitalizes on this power position and knocks a team that is spraying with their head uncovered out in the open. Veno gets a headshot snipe, but this time Queasy and Veno decide to fly down the mountain because they know where zone is going to be thanks to them getting the guard tower. Once they pick up this elimination and get the loot, I want you to take notice of what Veno does. He gives one slurp to Queasy and then he takes one himself and then uses the open slot inventory to take 6 additional splashes, thus showing the importance of quick heals such as splashes in team modes and something you should also be implementing into your gameplay. Coming up a little bit later is the first big mistake of the VOD review in my opinion. They decide to W-Keem a team that just pretty much is shambles after Veno gets a little bit of damage. Unfortunately, Queasy overcommits thinking that there's a soul in the box, he jumps in and actually goes down. Veno is going to do an excellent job of clutching up, using the Mitra ramp phase to get in and then easily shotgun the other opponent. The big issue with this is because he got all of those splashes specifically for endgame, he now has to use them on Queasy and now will later take some floppers instead of having those additional 6 splashes. Another minor mistake occurs after the 1v2 by Veno. Queasy and Veno decide to venture out, crouch walking in the middle of Bastion with a lot of teams around, and Veno drops to ultimate low ground and gets a lot of attention. This also puts them in a pretty bad spot for next zone, and Queasy has the mind to draw them back, reposition them, and get them ready for the endgame. After getting them repositioned, Queasy decides to move the team to low ground and makes a nice wide edit to try and pick off teams that are using the rocket to fly ahead. Notice how Queasy and Veno, despite both having rockets in their inventory, haven't used them yet. And in this rotate, they decide to go by foot, and Veno gets a huge pickup onto pro player Carmi. Veno then sees another opponent later on in the moving zone and tries to pick him off. He jumps in the box, misses a shotgun shot which causes him to go to a very congested lower layer, and after picking up the elimination, gets focused. But fortunately, Queasy is there to hold his back, create a lot of space. Even though there is a ton of pressure going on, they end up making it out and getting the refresh. Right before moving zones, Queasy is going to get a free elimination on a team on the other side that's about to rocket out, and Veno uses the very overpowered free edit to pick off Banyak, Carmi's duo, who was hiding in a cone, and they are looking very good for this next moving zone. But this is when things start to get very chaotic. After picking up that opponent, they have decided to rotate out with the rockets since there's a bunch of congestion ahead of them. Queasy gets out safe, but unfortunately for Veno, he goes right by height and gets knocked out of the air. But Queasy, the competitive veteran, has presence of mind to try and go for the res, and Veno puts him in a very uncongested spot, which allows him to get the res off. Veno also has the presence of mind to drop Queasy quick splashes so that they can splash, pop their slurps, and then move to zone, but this is also when things go from even bad to worse. After Veno gets in the game, Queasy decides to make a high call because he has a ton of materials, but somehow Queasy is the only one that lands on height, and Veno is stuck on ultimate low ground. Veno tries the route, trying to get to Queasy, but he gets griefed at least twice with a rocket and nearly goes down the storm. But don't worry, Queasy is going to go incredibly huge here as a solo. Queasy tarps a little bit forward and notices the builds above him are incredibly weak. He decides to chop it out with the AR, and he's fortunate enough to get a knock. This now gives Veno an opportunity to use the rocket and go to height, but other top EU pro Pixie also wants the height. Queasy catches Pixie, who is paying attention to Veno in the sky, and hits him for a good amount with his shotgun. This allows Veno to land safely, and now Queasy and Veno are going to have height for the rest of the match. After taking height, Queasy and Veno play the height pretty standard. They tarp ahead and pressure any teams that are close to them, especially in hard mats. Veno is going to do a fantastic job of using pre-edits to pick up this duo and get them the refresh they need to push for the last final zone. They play height pretty standard. Queasy sits up a couple of layers above, and Veno goes on lower levels looking for frags. Unfortunately though, after picking up an elimination, Queasy decides to double edit on this duo and actually ends up running into both of them and gets knocked. Unfortunately, Veno is now left to solo clutch, but he has the Breacher shotgun, and you're going to see absolutely how valuable it is, especially in his hands. He uses it to take builds as he's cranks for height, and this gives him the time to use the Minimus to get him all the way up to full HP. He takes advantage of the Breacher's high damage by jumping on the opponent who doesn't expect it, and he hits a max damage shot, getting the refresh. Also, fortunately for Veno, the other opponent is on a rocket. He uses his time, goes back in storm a little bit, waits for the opponent to land, hits a massive shot with the Breacher shotgun, and all he has to do is hit him once with the SMG, and that is how they dropped a 30 bomb at the highest level of elo in EU. Well guys, that is going to do it for today's video VOD review. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please drop a like on it, hit that subscribe button, and turn on post notifications. And I hope I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.